All right, Nick, a team we love to talk about is none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. They had a rough go of it the last couple of weeks. A tough, hard fought win over the Bengals, a tough loss to New England, but you're in both games, so that's got to feel nice. I think that there's some consolation prize in that. But there's also been some nice standout performers so far, and that's what we want to know before we get into this story, Nick. Steelers fans, let us know in the comments below. So far this season, who has stood out to you the most? Who are you hanging your hat on, saying, this is the guy that we wanted to see for the Steelers? Is it someone like Miles Jack? Obviously, the first game, TJ Watt was impressive, but he's going to be out for a few games. Deontay Johnson just signed a big deal. He's made some pretty crazy catches so far this season. So let us know in the comments below who's been the guy to stick out to you so far this season. But Nick, what do you got about the Pittsburgh Steelers?
So you're talking about guys that have stuck out. A guy who has stuck out for the bad reasons is none other than Mitch Trubisky. He came in obviously free agent deal, potentially to be the franchise guy that drafted Kenny Pickett, who's going to be the guy. Well, so far Trubisky has struggled. They beat the Bengals on basically the back of their defense, and then had a lot of struggles offensively against the Patriots. Just going through Trubisky's numbers here against New England: 21 of 33 for a $168. That's 5.1 yards an attempt. That's terrible. 1 touchdown and 1 turnover with 3 sacks. Really struggled late in the game to convert any sort of third downs. And you're starting to see the calls for Kenny Pickett, and they're getting louder and louder. And I'm going to go through a few of them here. This is the first from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This is Joe Starkey saying, quote, seriously, give me a good reason why Kenny Pickett shouldn't start in Cleveland. Mitch Trubisky hasn't been horrible. That's true, but he hasn't been good either. Some will label the call for Pickett ridiculous, but you know what's truly ridiculous? This passing game. Are we ever going to see a receiver catch a ball in stride and run with it? Starkey went on to say, I don't expect a quarterback change on a quick turnaround, but the discussion will start in Pittsburgh because they have such a good defense, which is true. This is a good defense, good running game, good offensive line. They have players. George Pickens is a beast. Claypool's a beast. Johnson's a beast. Freiermuth's good. They have players. But the defense are going to start asking themselves, will the youngster give us a better opportunity to not waste this defensive performance? And there's more. This is according to Peter King over at NBC Sports, says, I think there will be a chorus of it's way too early that, and I understand the sentiment, but is Kenny Pickett warming up in a bullpen yet? The Trubisky-led offense has put up 30 points in 9 offensive quarters and 255 yards per game. That won't cut it long term. And finally, I think this is most, I'll pass it over to your ESPN's Dan Graziano said this. What do the Steelers have to lose? Are they going to drop from 255 yards per game to 245? Yeah, exactly. That's right on the money there. Like, even if, Pickett, there's a slight different performance right now compared to Trubisky. It's been so bad offensively for the Steelers, moving the football, sustaining drives, that even if Pickett underperforms, at least early on, it's not a big drop to the bottom. Maybe you're seeing these calls, these choruses for Pickett to kind of get, win the starting job, get the starting job very early on for the Pittsburgh Steelers right now. What are your thoughts on Pickett, Trubisky, and this whole quarterback situation in Pittsburgh?
Well, Nick, and it's like I said in a couple of other videos so far, it's not like Pickett sitting behind Aaron Rodgers. It's not like he's sitting by Ben Roethlisberger. It's not Tom Brady back there. He's not learning from, a consummate, well-established professional of, how to win, how we're doing this, how we're doing that. If we're being honest about it, he's sitting behind Mitch Trubisky, who's kind of trying to prove himself. We have no idea what he is right now. At one point in time, he was a Pro Bowler, kind of fell off, went to go to Buffalo to be a backup. Now he's back in Pittsburgh to be a bridge guy. Is he the future? It seems so far that he's probably not. Then you got Mason Rudolph in there, career backup up to this point. It's not like Pickett is sitting behind some superstar quarterback, getting all of the how-tos. He's probably learned as much as he could from these two guys, no offense. So like they're saying, what is the harm if you're going out and your offense has been so stale to begin? What is the harm in starting a guy? And now, in the next 2-3 games, I think there's prime time for Pickett to find his way in. You got to pick your matchup and pick your poison on who you want Pickett to go up against. But I think there's a couple of opportunities for him to come in and really start getting NFL experience. He's the only quarterback drafted in the first round. You draft a guy in the first round because you believe he's the future, okay? And if you want this team to have a future this season, it seems as if he's the only option so far to start for Pittsburgh. Would you agree with that, Nick?
Yeah, because I think one of the things going into the season with the AFC North, we didn't know how it was going to shake out. We knew the Ravens were probably going to be good when they were healthy. The Bengals were coming off a Super Bowl run, but the Browns have Browns issues. We didn't really know how it was going to shake out. The Pittsburgh Steelers, theoretically, depending how things looked, maybe, especially with guys like Pickens looking like monsters in the preseason, maybe they were going to come out early and beat the absolute beast. But with Trubisky running the show, they aren't. And that is the real problem because they have those playmakers on the outside and they're not using them. And right now, the AFC North, I think, is kind of at a hinge point. The Ravens coming off a tough loss. The Bengals are 0-2. They've absolutely blown easy opportunities for, or at least an easy opportunity against Dallas. They had Pittsburgh multiple chances, and Pittsburgh was able to make enough defensive plays, to come out on top of that one. And you obviously the Browns with that heartbreaking loss against the Jets, and now they have to go, play Pittsburgh, in Cleveland coming up on the short week. So I think when I look at that, I'm just like, listen, you can't wait around. The division right now is kind of at sort of like a choke point to see exactly who's going to take the lead. And if you let Trubisky falter, let's say you lose against Cleveland, and then you have the Jets, and then you have Buffalo, Tampa, Miami, Philly, and then New Orleans after that, after the bye. There's a lot of really good teams coming down the pipe. You don't want to fall into like a losing streak because your offense and your quarterback play has really fallen down the wayside, especially when how competitive the AFC is. If you lose 2 or 3 games, if you go to 1-3, you're basically done. And so while you may think, well, Pickett's long-term, I honestly think there's a strong chance Pickett is as good as Trubisky is right now. And at this point, you have to make that call. If you're Tomlin, you have to say, listen, my guys on defense are seeing what Trubisky's doing. If Pickett is anywhere close to as good as Trubisky in practice and things like that, you got to get him in the game because otherwise those defensive players will start to, get a little mutiny growing, a little frustration growing.
Yeah, and my final point for this would be I think you have 2 prime opportunities coming up, okay? Obviously, Joe Flacco was able to put up 300 yards against the Cleveland secondary, so that's a good option for Pickett to come in, hopefully light it up. You would imagine that he's better than like a 40-year-old Joe Flacco at this point in his career. But then another opportunity is flip that over as well. You could either pick Cleveland or the team they went against, the Jets. The Jets gave up 30 points to Jacoby Brissett led Cleveland. Obviously, there's a lot of rushing attack, but get this, Pittsburgh, you have an excellent running back in Najee Harris, so there's no way you couldn't lean on that as well. So I think you have 2 really prime games coming up. Maybe you let them hang out against the Jets, a little bit weaker defensively in the secondary, but also Cleveland seems to have a pretty weak secondary so far this season. So I think those are 2 prime games for him to start, and I think we should keep our eye on those.